Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick, the heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsom with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Howe, pump fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Howe at the 5, takes the shot. Pinballing off the chains for the touchdown. Showing the toughness for 6. Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right. Goes to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag. Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll it apart. Oh, now he's going to throw it and score! Christian May throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown. They are from the play through left-handed. Was walking out on the run and threw it left-handed. Nard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Vlog podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, here with you guys as always, coming at you live on a Friday night before Super Bowl 60. And that means that we have more coverage for you on the Drake May front. We have more coverage for you just on the Tar Heels in the Super Bowl front. We'll talk to Deems May, the former Tar Heel tight end here on this edition of the podcast, a guy that knows Drake incredibly well from his time at Myers Park. Of course, he's also a guy that knew his dad incredibly well, so you'll hear some stories about that. We'll also ask him about James Spurling, the director of Kenan Stadium, who passed away yesterday, and you saw a huge outpouring of support for him, for his family, and everything like that. And that's how we wanted to start this edition of the podcast, by just saying rest in peace to James Spurling. I did not get a chance to know him, unfortunately. I know there are so many in the Tar Heel community that did, though, and he was a special, special guy from his time, prior to being the director of Kenan Stadium to eventually his time with the program. So I want to just say a quick condolences to his family, and we will be praying for him and you guys during this time. And so we'll make the transition, though. One thing that I did want to talk about before we get to Deems May here on this edition of the podcast and start focusing on the Super Bowl, again, did want to tell you guys a little bit about the guy that Carolina landed in the 2026 class. I have not talked to you about 3-star interior offensive lineman Dewan Davis, who is a guy that committed to Carolina's class late. He is the number 2,387 overall prospect, the number 241 interior offensive lineman, according to the Rivals industry rankings. Played his high school football at Clearwater Central Catholic School in Clearwater, Florida. And this is one of those guys that was a 3-year starter, judging off of the high school film that we got of him. Spent his time at right guard his first 2 seasons before moving and playing left tackle his senior season. Davis, 380 pounds to go along with a 6'7" frame. Definition of a guy that is a mauler on the inside of that offensive line. And we've seen guys like that before, but this is a guy that really piles up the pancake blocks, has really powerful hands, a tremendous upper body strength that allows him to blow defensive linemen back off the line of scrimmage. Physicality, definitely no issue for him. The thing that I think will be interesting, though, is to see if it translates to the college level, where you will have defensive tackles that will be just as physical back to him as he is to the players that are out there on the field when he's playing. Doesn't get many opportunities to do it on his senior film, but he is a guy that has some success in pull blocking situations. He did that a lot when he was at guard, or a lot might be a little much, but there definitely are some of those highlights if you go back to his junior film, if you go back to his sophomore film, where he is using the pull block to his advantage. He does a good job of being able to get out there, shows some decent mobility for his size. Don't think that that's necessarily one of the areas that he shines, probably an area that he will have to get better at if he's going to play at this next level. But still, not something that is completely foreign to him. I think one of the things that he's going to have to do before he can play at Carolina is he's going to have to drop weight, and he's going to have to drop his pad level. I think that's going to be two important things for him in order for him to succeed at this level. This is one of those guys that Carolina just kind of took a shot in the dark on. They're really just looking to see whether or not they can find something here along the offensive line that can help them because of the issues that they have with the depth with that group. And so that's the main reason that they're taking this shot. I don't think this is someone that's going to necessarily be a starter right away. I think he's someone, if he gets to contribute to Carolina, it's going to be a couple of years down the road, but it gives Carolina an extra body and someone on the interior of that offensive line that is at least, there, can go through camp and can help them in certain ways in terms of the numbers on their roster. So not someone that's going to make a huge impact, but certainly someone that as we do anytime Carolina adds somebody, certainly someone that we're going to mention. All right, let's now get to Deems May. Let's talk a little more about Drake. Let's talk a little more about Chasserat and Mac Hollins, but especially Drake. That's who we're focused on here this week because he is the first starting quarterback in a Super Bowl that comes from the University of North Carolina. And so that is a big focus for us here on the Heel Tough blog side of things. And so we went out, we talked to Deems May, who's a guy that had a son that went to Myers Park, was very familiar with that program even before then, got to know Drake a little bit, through his dad when he was younger. And then, of course, followed him up through the ranks of the of high school. And then, of course, in his time at Carolina when Deems was still doing some stuff for the Tar Heel radio network. And so here's that interview with Deems now, and stick around at the end. We'll promote some of the stuff that we have coming up on the website and some of the other stuff that we could have in the future around the Super Bowl. So here is former Tar Heel tight end Deems May. We're now joined by a former Tar Heel and a guy that knows a lot about the Tar Heel football program, but also knows a little bit about the guy that's getting ready to play in the Super Bowl, Drake May. It is Deems May, not his father. We need to clear that up. We had a friend that used to refer to you as Drake's father. That is not the case. That's the great Mark May, but Deems May, whose son still on the Carolina roster at Carolina. He's joining us now. Deems, how's it been going, man? It's been a long time, but glad to get you back on.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's a pretty sad day in Tar Heel Nation. We lost James Spurling, who kind of ran just everything at Carolina on the facility side. And I know there's a lot on social media, but James ran a filling station down when I was in school. And, I mean, anytime anything broke down, you went down and he fixed your car. He just has been a staple in Chapel Hill forever, and it's just a sad day. Kind of passed suddenly, and we don't know any details, but if everybody keeps their prayers out for his family and everybody that James touched, man, what a great guy, and you'll see nothing but positive. What a gentleman and just a gentle, great man. And so it's been a tough day, but it's heavy on the hearts of Tar Heels right now.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of people that are paying tribute to him. I never got the chance to actually meet him, but just share a little bit of your experiences with him, being around him, and how important he was to the Tar Heel football program.
Yeah, I tell you, you can go back all the way through, way back to when I first got there again with Coach Crum, and that was actually Mark May's senior year. Drake's dad, and I was a freshman, and James, he owned the filling station down by the steakhouse, down by the mall, everywhere down that way out on 15501, and if you ever need your car serviced, or something broke down, James was always there. Used to have the highway patrolman stop by and have a little grill and, soda pops and everything. And that goes back to 1987. So Then he kind of, he sold the filling station, and then Coach, I can't remember, don't quote me on who offered him a job, but I'm going to go with Coach Brown the first time around, or maybe right after that. He kind of got a job, working stadium, doing security. He used to have this big old key ring, man, that had 10,000 keys on it, I remember, but just the sweetest man and was everywhere. And then they kind of, when Coach Brown came back, we did I think they named the court, a part of the courtyard up to him and did a dedication. Just, helped every sport. The baseball, basketball, everybody knew James. He was just probably one of the biggest Tar Heels you'll ever meet, and you'll find nobody that loved Carolina more.
All right, so yeah, definitely if you guys want to, make sure you send out those prayers to the Spurling family. Mm-hmm. Let's make the transition as difficult as it is. Let's talk a little bit about Drake. You have known him for a long, long time, especially being friends with Mark. When did you really realize, hey, we've got this is a special young man that you've got on your hands here?
Well, I tell you, the first time I saw him, we were actually up at Grandfather Mountain, and I'd been gone a while, and I saw Mark up there, and his in-laws had a place, and we were. And I saw the three tall brothers out, on the bouncy machine in the water, and then I saw this one little one that they were just bouncing all around, throwing around, and I knew the three were Mark's kids. And I said, "Who's the little one?" And he goes, "That's my little one." It had to be 2010 or 11. I don't know. He was 7, 8, 6, 7, or 8, sometimes around there, and they were just beating him up all to death. And he goes, "I think he can run the best out of all of them." I'll never forget Mark saying that. I said, some things you don't forget. He said, "Yeah, he's a good little athlete, man. He can really run." And he was getting just beat to a pulp out there. And that's the first time I saw him. And then, fast forward, the transition, you just kept hearing about him. A couple of middle school games, you would see some clips. And then when he came from Huff to Myers Park, and just the 7-on-7s and just the news got out. This kid, you got to see Mark's youngest throw it, and so we went to some 7-on-7s and saw him probably, right going 8th grade, and then made the move to Myers Park the 10th grade year.
Yeah, and he goes to Myers Park, puts together an amazing career there, becomes one of really Charlotte's best quarterbacks that we've seen in a long, long time. And that junior year was something special, man. Mm-hmm. You look back on that junior season, what are some of the memories that stick out about that year where he threw for 50 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and came pretty close to winning a state title?
Yeah, I'll go back 1 year before that, because I remember talking to Mark, and it was his sophomore year, and these offers were coming in from everywhere, and the one that he hadn't gotten yet was Carolina, and it was a Friday game his sophomore year, and I can't remember who they played, but he's 17 of 20 or 21 of 24, 2 drops, 1 throwaway. It was unbelievable game, and Carolina had played the night before against Miami on Thursday night, I think it was, and I think Chas Surratt was the quarterback. And Carolina had a thing with Larry Fedora that they couldn't offer, sophomores unless they'd seen him in person. And I watched Drake in that game that sophomore year, and I just picked up the phone the next day, and I was wondering why they hadn't offered him, And I said, Coach, he's more accurate than anybody you got on that squad right now. And they had just gotten destroyed at Miami, and Chas turned out all right, pretty good linebacker going to play Sunday, but it was just a fact. And watching him in that game in the deep ball, and I just was telling everybody since, that sophomore year, I've been down to Manning Academy for years and years. I'm 20 years veteran down there. I've never seen anybody as accurate as Drake May, and I've seen a bunch. And I kept telling everybody he's the most accurate I've ever seen. And fast forward through that year, I don't know how we didn't win the national state championship. That's a long story. Take a whole nother podcast. But man, it was just uncanny. Good weapons for sure, but man, he didn't miss many throws at all. He had every throw he could make. People did not realize how athletic he was. I still think they underestimate his athletic ability. That's really come out this year. Everybody thinks 6'5", tall guy in the pocket can't move, but man, he can move, and he's shown that. But I think going back to it, everything I said from 9th, 10th grade on was accuracy, and I think those 2 throws against Houston, were even better catches. But those are just two examples. There are not many in the NFL that can make that right now. I don't care who you talk about.
Well, one of the areas that he really shines, and this was something that I noticed about him early when I went and watched him at Myers Park, is the deep passing game. And yeah, part of it was just that he had a great group of wide receivers, but you really started to pick up on there's something special in terms of the accuracy that he has down the field. Why do you think he's been so successful in that area?
I think it's just, I don't know, y'all are way too young to remember. His dad was, an incredible player. I mean, we went to Gus Purcell quarterback camp. I was a ninth grader at Lexington, and Mark was, a rising senior at Independence, and everybody wanted to go down there. And we were down here in Charlotte at Gus Purcell quarterback camp, and everybody came out to see Mark throw it. And, man, he could just throw it. I mean, he was the best. And then he'd go pitch a Legion game, and eventually worn out, wore his rotator cuff out, but way before pitch counts came into play. He would pitch every night, come throw 500 balls, and he was just an iconic athlete that everybody got to watch. And I just think, his granddad was a great pitcher, so you got location there, and you got Mark, who was a great quarterback. And of course, Maye, an excellent athlete as well. And Drake got a little bit of all of them, but his deep ball has just been ridiculous since I've ever seen him throw the first pass. And I tell you, there's not many. Again, I'm going to keep going back because I don't know if there's a better defense that you're going to see than that Houston Texans defense. And it took two unbelievable throws and two even better catches for them to get out of there. And he just makes unbelievable deep throws, and he's always been that way. And I just think it's a little combination of having all of that in your blood.
So one of the things that we've heard, is that Drake was, of course, recruited very heavily out of high school, was committed to Alabama at one point, and then, of course, shifts his commitment to Carolina. But then, after his first season with Carolina, his first season that he plays with Carolina, he gets some big-time offers and has a chance to leave, but never chose to do that. How incremental do you think that Mack Brown was in him staying there during that time and ultimately paving the way for the legacy that he had?
Yeah, I'll give you another good little story on that. I got a text one night at my house, and it said Drake just committed to Alabama, and this was October of his junior year, and I replied. I didn't have the name on the number. I replied, "Long way to next December. Who is this?" And he said, "This is Coach Brown. This is my new number." And I said, "Yeah, Coach." I said, "We're gonna get to work on him." I said, "I know his granddad pretty well. I know they don't want to drive to Tuscaloosa. Let's get to work and make sure he knows he made the wrong decision." And so we were talking about it then. That was October of his junior year, and Coach Brown doesn't lose many. He came in and just made it a point that he's a Carolina kid. His parents are Carolina kids. His brothers, everybody's Carolina, and Coach Brown was the best, and he came in and made that happen. And fast forward to the first, of course, that going into junior year or second year as a Carolina starter with NIL going, I was actually on the NIL board and was talking to Mark, and some of the offers that he got were a lot of people thought they weren't real, but they were real. I mean, you're talking $5.5 million. We saw him, and his dad was like, he doesn't want to go anywhere. Just he's a Tar Heel, wants to be a Tar Heel, but let's talk. It is NIL. It is what it is, and Coach Brown was right there, and we had a group, and the Carolina people came together. He shared with offensive linemen, and he I don't know how close he was, but I mean, you kept hearing he wanted to be a Tar Heel, and he's always wanted to stay, and everybody loved that loyalty, but it goes back to Coach Brown on the flip and getting him to do it, the flip, and hopefully everybody around him had a little bit to do with it. You don't. I kept telling his granddad, I said, "Jerry, I said, you don't want to drive down Tuscaloosa every other week. We got to get him." And we would laugh, and we had a good time with it, but it was serious. We were really excited when he changed it, and when all the NIL money came in and able to work out that contract, and it kind of fed downhill, and helped out some other people around, and we were able to keep him at Carolina, and now everybody knew he was going to be great. Everybody saw how great he was going to be, how accurate it is. But I don't think anybody pictured a Super Bowl in in his second year for sure. I don't know if anybody saw that.
Yeah, especially with the landscape of the NFL. I think there were a lot of people that thought, especially with the guys that we've seen in the league these past few years, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, would he be able to overcome all of those guys in the AFC? And he's been able to do it. One other thing that I wanted to ask you about his Carolina legacy before we start talking a little bit more about the Patriots and everything like that. When you look at his legacy, I know that the big-time wins aren't necessarily there, and that's part of the reason why you have the conversation about how great was the Mac Brown 2.0 era and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at his legacy, where do you sit him amongst the great quarterbacks in Tar Heel history? Because I think he's probably either one or two. He's right there with his buddy Sam Howell.
Yeah, I tell you. Well, I tell you, it's kind of hard. It's kind of like that. With everything that's happened this year, it kind of makes you even think more about it. But even how he was doing, Sam, you can kind of go back. Sam had a hell of a career. I mean, if Drake goes one more year, obviously he would have probably been the best. You think even back to Rod Elkins, and there were some really, really good quarterbacks. But I don't know if I don't know if anybody had just what we saw as far as the ultimate looking, NFL quarterback, and just, I mean, let's face it, we knew our defenses were not up to par, and it cost a lot of games, and we had to outscore a lot of people, and everybody knows that. It was a tough time on the defensive side of the ball, and we just kept trying to score and score and score, and we kept finding ways to score, but some of his throws, I mean, we talk about one of the games, up at Pitt that time in the cold weather. Just he's had some unbelievable games, and I don't know how well how you can chart it right now, but got to be, definitely top three. It's going to be hard to keep him, out of the top spot, because I just don't think anybody, even where he is right now, given that year he's had, regardless of what happens on Sunday, every time we got the ball at Chapel Hill, you knew we were going to score. So it's going to be tough to keep him off the top for sure.
Yeah, I go back to the first season that he played at Carolina or started at Carolina, and he makes the throw against Duke in Durham. Just an unbelievable throw to Antoine Green. Beautiful ball placement. That's what you're looking for from him. And I think that those were the moments that really got you saying, man, this kid is really something special. And even though, Mitch Trubisky went number 2 overall, I think we knew when Drake got selected number 3, he had the best chance to be the best NFL quarterback. And he showed you that a little bit this year. When it comes to the MVP debate, I know where you probably stand on it, but what the fact that he's even in the race for MVP, how special of a season did he really put together this year, especially to be able to do it in year 2 in the NFL?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, the worst he's going to finish is second, and anything you look at in the NFL and the way they're voting on things right now, you got to take it with a grain of salt. The whole Hall of Fame shenanigans, and I mean, it's just unbelievable how unqualified these voters are. And again, they're going to talk about Stafford, and he's a hell of a quarterback, and he probably hadn't gotten his MVP he should have gotten or whatever. But they would get down there around the 5-yard line or 2-yard line. They were going to make sure he's padded that touchdown, that touchdown mark. So there's a lot of talk right now, but either way, this ain't going to be his last time in the conversation, whether he gets it or not. And for a second year in there, for a team that won 4 games last year,
yes,
starting a true rookie at left tackle and some receivers that people thought were over the washed up and had a good tight end in there, and he got sacked a lot, but man, he just kept sticking in the pocket, and you just watched his confidence grow this year, and he's battle tested too. You think about like those defenses he's seen, the weather he's played in. Everybody's talking Sam Darnold, and there's a reason why Sam Darnold's been with 5 teams. Drake ain't going to be ever with 5 teams. So it's what a special year.
Yeah, no, it's been amazing to watch him really from the start. What do you make? There have been some people that have been telling me this week, and you go back and you look at some of the statistics, and people are saying, this is one of the weakest schedules that you've seen from a team in the NFL. My thing is, though, I think you just play who's in front of you. And it seems like, especially in some of the bigger games this year, I know, the game that Buffalo has where they end up coming back on him, he wasn't great in the second half of that game, but really did put on a great performance in that first half. I think still he put up some amazing performances, even against some of the lesser teams that other guys wouldn't be able to put up in this league or didn't put up in this league this year against those same type of opponents. What do you say to those that have the pushback of he really had an easy schedule to be able to get him here?
Yeah, that they're going to always find some stuff. I tell you, if this week hasn't proven how much New England is disliked across the country, then you're never going to see it. I mean, the keep Belichick and Kraft out of the Hall of Fame will just show you. So there's going to be people that always have excuses. I tell you, you're not going to find a league, and I'm not a big NFL fan. I'm not a Goodell fan. I don't like how they treat the retired players, how they don't help us out with insurance or anything else. But one thing they do well is they have parity in the league, and you're not going to find the LA Dodgers in the NFL. You're not going to find these teams like in the NBA that just pay over the cap. It's a hard cap. These teams are very, very equal, regardless of what you're doing. There's no tanking that's going on. You play the schedule that's in front of you, but again, you're not going to have in the other leagues teams that go 4-14 or 4-13 come back and do it in 1 year, right? I mean, so they weren't that far off. There's just little bits and pieces, and these teams that are having bad years aren't that far off. They're all really talented, equally talented across the board for the most part. And, it's just bad luck with injuries or whatever, but there's so much parity in the NFL. I'm just not going to go with that. Look how easy the schedule is. It's just, give me something else. Just say that, I don't like the Patriots. They've won enough. Don't be putting them down for having a schedule. I'm going to tell you what, they went through a gauntlet of defenses in that playoff run, and regardless of what happens Sunday, they're not going to play a better defense. If somebody tells me Seattle's defense is better than Houston's defense, I've got to see it in person, because the only way they won that game was 2 perfect throws and 2 great catches by the Patriots against a defense that was as good as I've seen. And then they go into Denver, which I'm going to tell you is the hardest place to play. If you go to that altitude and it's cold, you can't breathe a lick. They had the advantage there, regardless of what people say, and that was a good defense. They found ways to win. They're going to go into San Francisco now. It's going to be 65. They're going to be battle-tested. There's going to be no snow. Seattle's not going to have the 12th man screaming like crazy. I think we're in for a good surprise on Sunday. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, me and you both. I think there is a chance that this is really the best playoff game that we've seen him play. When you look at the road to the playoffs and everything, it has been a little bit of a bumpy road. There have been moments where he hasn't looked exactly like himself from the regular season, and you saw that a little bit in the game against Denver, but the elements were a big part of that. What would be your message to him going into this game? He's been under a lot of pressure. His offensive line has struggled a little bit. What would be your message to him if you talked to him before this game going up against this Seattle defense?
Yeah, I think the first playoff game, that first half, you could see the nerves. And why couldn't you, a 23-year-old kid out there in the first playoff game? But again, going through that gauntlet and of good defenses, regardless of whatever everybody thinks about it, he's battle tested. I think that after those 3 right now, I think it's going to be like everybody else has watched him play. Sometimes curling the ball down and taking a sack or throwing a thing 40 yards up in the end zone's okay. Don't try to make a play every single time. I think that's the one thing that all young quarterbacks need to hear the most. Sometimes a punt's not a bad play, especially when your defense is going. So I'm sure he's hearing that a bunch. I know his dad really, really well, and I know he is talking to him all the time. They're probably breaking down film over Zoom right now or every night, and he'll be ready, and the best team will probably win like they always do, but it's going to always come down to who can run the ball and who doesn't turn it over, and that's what's going to be kind of the factor, as always.
Yeah, and he could be a big part of that factor as well in terms of the running the football. Definitely think he's going to be able to show off those legs a little bit here in the Super Bowl, and that could surprise Seattle a little bit in this matchup. One last thing that I wanted to ask you on the way out here, as we'll be sitting on our couches locked in, ready to go for this game. What about the other guys that are playing in this game? Some of your quick memories from, a guy like Mac Hollins, who is definitely a little more eccentric than he was when he was at Carolina, we'll put it that way. And then Chaz Surratt being able to play in this game as well. That's got to be a special moment for him, a kid from Denver, North Carolina that gets to play in the Super Bowl as well.
And no doubt. I tell you, Mac gives every walk-on player in the country hope. I mean, the guy just did everything right, got really tutored up well, got by Gunnar Brewer as a wide receiver. Came into that league just because he could run. It always comes down, can you run? Well, he made the best of it. He ran great 40 times, and then all of a sudden he makes his name on special teams, and that's how you really have to do it in that league. Next thing you know, he gets up there and he starts catching balls, Philly and Buffalo and catches from Josh Allen and then starts getting some confidence and really turns out to be a good route runner, but just gives every walk-on hope. Chaz Surratt, another great athlete. I think, came in as a quarterback. I know that feeling didn't work out, ended up moving around a little bit. Again, special teams. I played special teams in that league. You got to make it if you're not a bona fide starter. And Chaz has come around and will always be known for the interception against Duke when they were driving down and tried the little jump pass, man. And he's in everybody, all Tar Heels' hearts on that one. What a great play that was. But have been banged up a little bit, but man, has found a way. And if all these guys out there that are college football players that are right on the brink of making NFL, it's going to be special teams, and it's kind of been taken away a little bit, but they brought it back with the kickoff now, and you're getting more plays. And if you can play special teams and be a good solid backup and a good teammate, you got a good chance to make that league. And be fun to watch these guys play Sunday for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to be locked in, ready to go. No offense to Chaz. I'm going to have my Drake May jersey on. I'm going to be rooting for him to get the job done and get that first Super Bowl, because I think it could be the start of what could be an amazing career. Maybe not. I'm not going to go as far as some of these people that say that maybe it could be better than Brady's. I'd love that. But let's just go out, get that first one, and then we will certainly be able to celebrate that as a fan base and everything like that. And maybe we'll celebrate a little bit later on this summer here, Deems. We'll have to get you back on. We really appreciate you talking, Drake here with us. Maybe when we get you on next time, talk a little bit more in depth about the Tar Heels this upcoming season.
For sure. It'll be fun to watch and happy for all these Tar Heels, and be pulling for Drake hard as well. It'll be fun, and it'd be great to see them come in there. Nobody's giving them a whole lot of chance right now, and Seattle's kind of a sexy pick, so you can sneak in there and have some fun Sunday and win that ball game.
All right, Deems, thanks so much, man. Greatly appreciate you.
Yep, good talking to you, bud. Talk to you soon.
All right, so there's Deems May, the former Tar Heel, talking to us a little bit about Drake, and some great stories there from Deems about a guy that I think all of us really look at as one of the best quarterbacks that's ever put on a Tar Heel jersey. And so, we're going to have you covered on the website, HeelToughBlog.com. We'll have an article going up on Sunday morning that'll detail a little bit about each one of those guys, a little more detail on Drake and, of course, his entire career and the path that he's taken to get here. We have a article that was formerly written on the website that we will put up about Mac Hollins that you'll be able to check out as well from his time when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles and won his first ring. He'll be looking for a second ring. And then, of course, in that article that we will write about Drake and all the other guys that are in this Super Bowl, we will talk a little bit about Chaz Surratt. So a bunch of different angles that you can take for the Super Bowl, but I think most of us will be taking the same angle, rooting for Drake May to get his first Super Bowl win in just his second season. And so we'll have you covered on the website. No matter what happens in the Super Bowl, just head over to HeelToughBlog.com for all that coverage. And then, of course, we're getting closer and closer, guys, to spring practice getting ready to get underway. So I'll have you covered all through the spring on the website, all through the spring here on the podcast side of things as well. So make sure you stick around for any of that information that's coming out as we get closer and closer to the month of March when that will be taking place. And then, of course, once you get through that, we'll, of course, be looking forward to whatever they're going to do for the fans. Hopefully there'll be some sort of event at the end of spring practice, whether it's practice like a pro once again or an actual spring game. We'll make sure that we have that covered for you guys on all fronts. So plenty of great content on the football side of things coming your way over the next couple of months. Meanwhile, on the basketball side of things, it's Carolina Duke on Saturday. We've got you covered with everything that you need on the website, HeelToughBlog.com. We've got the preview article that'll be going up tomorrow for you guys, and then the recap article, which will probably be up on Sunday. But we, in the meantime, have the preview edition of the podcast that you can go check out. We've got Hubert Davis's press conference takeaways that Josh did earlier this evening, and we got an edition of the podcast coming up right after this with Andy Bagwell, who wrote the Duke Sucks book. So plenty of great stuff for you guys to check out here on during this rivalry week with the Duke Blue Devils. So leading you up to tomorrow's game, where we'll have you covered on all fronts with a recap edition of the podcast tomorrow night, regardless of what happened. So make sure you're tuned in on these same outlets. Make sure you head over to the YouTube page, Heel Tough Blog on YouTube. Make sure you give us a subscription over there. We would greatly appreciate that. We've got over 600. Now we're trying to get to 700 and continue from there. So make sure you guys help us out with that. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Deems May for joining me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.